Right now, your survival probably depends on a job. You work, you get paid, then you use that money to buy food, water, shelter, clothing, and almost everything else keeping you alive. Remove the job, and the system begins to fail. But around 50,000 years ago, in the East African Rift near modern-day northern Tanzania, none of that exists. No salaries, no supermarkets, no farm, and no refrigerator containing 3 sauces, but nothing that could reasonably be called dinner. So what did ancient humans do all day before jobs existed? The answer is not that they escaped work. Survival itself became the work. Imagine waking in a temporary camp at the beginning of the dry season. The cold reaches you before sunrise. The fire has burned low during the night, leaving only a few embers beneath the ash. That fire was not a convenience. It was the camp's heater, kitchen, light source, and first line of defense. Humans had used fire for a very long time, but preserving live embers was easier than starting again from nothing. Before anyone could think about breakfast, the first survival task had already begun. Dry grass was added. Someone blew gently into the ash. The orange glow became a flame. One system was running. Modern people wake up and use systems that are already running. Prehistoric people had to check whether their systems had survived the night. Reviving the fire solved the first problem. It did nothing about the next one. Water. There was no tap, and the nearest pool was not automatically safe. Animals drank there. Predators waited nearby. Shallow water could be contaminated by mud, waste, or a dead animal upstream. The group had to remember which springs continued flowing through the dry season, which pools disappeared, and where dangerous animals had recently been seen. None of this knowledge was written on a map. It lived inside people. An experienced adult might recognize that a strip of greener vegetation suggested moisture below the surface. Another might remember a hollow in the rocks that still held rainwater several days after a storm. Their water system was not plumbing. It was shared memory, and forgetting could be fatal. Passing that memory on was not education after work. It was part of the. A modern child may learn not to touch an electrical socket. A prehistoric child had to learn which pool attracted predators and which plant could make them dangerously sick. The safety briefing was slightly longer. With fire restored and water located, the day was still nowhere near finished. Now, the group had to produce food without farms, shops, or guaranteed success. This is where the idea of one normal job falls apart. People had different skills, but survival demanded flexibility. A skilled hunter could still gather plants. Someone digging roots might also find eggs, insects, honey, shellfish, or animal sign. You did the task that mattered now. Then survival assigned the next one. A small group might leave camp to search for plant food. They were not wandering randomly. They knew where edible tubers grew, when fruit ripened, which trees attracted animals, and how recent rainfall changed what was available. Finding food was only half the job. Turning it into something safe and edible was the other half. Roots had to be dug, nuts cracked, fibrous plants pounded, soaked, or roasted. A supermarket hides most of this work. Prehistoric humans performed it themselves. Another group might search for animal tracks. Footprint could reveal size, direction, and how recently an animal had passed. Broken vegetation and droppings added more clues. The landscape was full of information, but none of it came with labels. Hunting offered the largest reward and the least reliable return. A pursuit could last for hours and still produce nothing. An animal could escape. A spear could break. A hunter could be injured far from camp. That is why the lone heroic hunter is the wrong pick. One dramatic kill could not be the group's entire food system. Plants, insects, small animals, honey, eggs, shellfish, and scavenged meat kept one failed hunt from becoming starved. Their safest strategy was variety. Less cinematic than one great hunt. Far better risk management. Back at camp, another kind of work continued. Stone cutting edges became dull. Wooden shafts split. Bindings loosened as they dried. Hides had to be scraped, and soft. Fuel had to be collected before darkness. None of this looked urgent while everything was working. That was the danger. Ignore maintenance for several days, and the entire group became more fragile. A blunt cutting tool made food processing slower. A damaged spear made hunting more dangerous. Wet fuel could mean a cold night without reliable fire. This maintenance work replaced factories, hardware stores, and delivery services. Every useful object had to be found, made, repaired, carried, or abandoned. That created a very different relationship with possessions. A mobile group had to carry nearly everything important when it moved. Every tool had to earn its weight. By midday, people might return with roots, fruit, seeds, or honey. A hunting group might return with meat, or they might return with nothing. But an unsuccessful hunter did not always go hungry. Food was shared. This was not simply kindness. It was survival insurance. Today, one person succeeded. Tomorrow, someone else might. Over time, risk was spread across the group. An individual could suffer several bad days and die. A cooperating group could absorb failure. The hunt had failed. The survival system had not. And the most important survival tool was not made from stone. It was the group itself. Ancient humans did not survive because every person was independently self-sufficient. They survived because they were interdependent. Modern people store much of their security in institutions. Banks store wealth. Insurance spreads risk. Emergency services respond when something goes wrong. Prehistoric groups stored much of their security in relationships, sharing food, caring for children, teaching knowledge, helping an injured companion. Each action strengthened the network that might later keep everyone alive. Social life was not separate from survival. It was survival infrastructure. When food arrived, it still had to be processed quick. Meat attracted insects and scavengers. Some could be cooked immediately. Other portions might be dried, smoked, or distributed. Bones provided marrow. Tendons could become bindings. Hides could become clothing, containers, or bedding. A successful hunt did not end when the animal died. That was when the manufacturing department opened. Prehistoric life was not one endless emergency. When urgent tasks were finished, people rested, talked, and played. Adults repaired equipment, made clothing, or worked on ornaments together. They may have controlled the timing of some tasks more than modern workers, but that did not make them freer from work overall. Play trained children in movement and cooperation. Stories made important information easier to remember. Conversation spread knowledge about water, animals, weather, and distant places. Rest preserved energy for tomorrow. Even downtime supported the next survival task. In a world where every calorie had to be found, that was sensible energy management, and the environment still controlled the schedule. A storm could arrive. Predators could approach. A missing hunter might need to be found. A child could become ill. There was no guaranteed end to the working day. Because there was no working day, there were only problems solved, and problems still waited. Then came the decision that could reshape the entire world. Should the group stay? Or should it move? Mobility was their final survival system. Modern people usually solve a local shortage by transporting supplies into the air. Prehistoric humans often solved it by transporting themselves out. When water declined, animals migrated, or edible plants disappeared, the group followed opportunity. This required knowledge of a much larger landscape. They needed to know not only where resources existed today, but where they might exist weeks or months later. Moving too early wasted energy. Moving too late could leave the group trapped with little food, weak children, and empty water sources. There was no manager assigning tasks. There was no paycheck at the end of the week, but there was still work. Followed biological needs instead of a clock. Protect the fire, find water, produce and process food, maintain the tools, share risk, teach the children, preserve relationships, know when to rest, and know when to move. This was not a life without responsibility. It was a life in which responsibility could not be outsourced. Modern people are freer from direct survival labor overall because thousands of specialists keep the larger system running. Someone purifies the water. Someone grows the food. Someone maintains the electrical grid. You perform one specialized job, receive money, and buy access to everyone else's work. Prehistoric humans had no anonymous network of specialists. Their system was smaller, personal, and visible around the fire. So what did ancient humans do all day before jobs existed? They did not clock in. They kept the survival system running. Ancient humans did not escape work. They escaped the job. Survival itself was their full-time